Thanksgiving Day in America, and to you around the rest of the world is a wonderful thing to be able to give thanks for the survival of a bunch of people. A lot of you around the world understand the idea of refugees, and so many Americans came seeking religious freedom to the United States, what was well the New World, and and that survival through that one really brutal winter up in New England was such a momentous thing, and that it's been celebrated ever since. And the fact is, we celebrate freedom. We celebrate the freedom to worship and all the other freedoms we enjoy. If you want to look at Rockwell, he did a series on the freedoms, the four freedoms, I think he called them. But we in America, have so much to be thankful for. And I'm not here to talk about, the world of other stuff than painting, but but I wish you all around the world well in building toward your own freedoms and righteousness, justice, liberty in your own countries. So I'm going to just talk about some things that I'm really thankful for as it relates to painting and as it relates to my history and development in painting, for whatever it's worth to you. And you will have heard several of these things before. Sometimes it's funny because some of these things in a context, just in a different context, give you a whole different sense. And but before I start, I wanted to mention Hyman Perez. Thank you for the donation so many of you have made over the course of this time. Hyman Perez, really nice donation. I didn't mean to say last names here, so I apologize for that. Thank you to James for your multiple, this is now multiple donations, hugely appreciated. And to Lisa for a really nice comment and a really large contribution that she says, I think she's saying expresses her appreciation for the content that she's receiving. So, I'm giving you what was given to me, and I find that everything I have, was given to me. And so what's not to be thankful for, right? What I mean to say, even though I know one of you brought recently to me the idea that we're all self-taught, well, we are all self-taught, except we're not at all self-taught. In other words, what we have is these marvelous examples from the past. And so the examples, the work itself, takes you out of that. You're not self-taught. You do have to sort out what they were doing or how to make a good picture, but you'll find that all along the way, you'll find something in writing, you'll find something in an example, or you'll find something, an example of work or an example of a life. So many of the people I knew, and so many of the people we all know from the past history, and I'm talking all through the cultures, the Chinese, the Japanese, and so many characters in history that have been really hard workers and developed. So they bring that love of their game. Some of them at virtually the expense of their lives. I know a couple guys in the time of the Barbizon era. One of them at least committed suicide. And there's more than one in that era that we know about, the 18th, 19th century. But even Millet thought about doing it. And he said the only reason he didn't, I think he said the reason he didn't was because one of his friends had done it. One of the other artists you would know. And he said, I saw what it did to his family. He said, I couldn't do that to anybody. So, but all of us have struggled. There's a wonderful struggle in this whole thing, isn't there? I mean, there's something about struggling and gaining and finding and searching out and all that stuff. I think somehow, in a way, humans are made for that, right? But I don't mean to wax philosophical. I just want to do some Thanksgiving. And so let me just take you back to my little old career. And high school, for example, I had two teachers in high school. Actually, I had one in grade school. I think I was third grade, and I had a teacher who he just would praise work, and that was really what he brought to it. I could have gone even before that, to age 5, and looking up at the wall, there's this Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington, the Smithsonian unfinished portrait. I'm sorry, it's called the Athenaeum portrait. And that was probably my introduction to painting, was right there when I saw this unfinished portion of a picture, and I somehow knew what painting was that day. Uh, so I guess I could say thank you, Gilbert Stuart, for leaving that unfinished, and even more so, thank you to Mrs. Schaefer, that ancient, marvelous woman who taught us to read, and for having it up on the walls. I mean, they all did. They were handed out by the state, presumably. This is in the days of what was probably one of the last of the one-room schoolhouses. So those things, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. There's little things that are the triggers for your career. And but when I got to the level of high school, I had two teachers, one of whom just simply wanted me, as it were, to be free, and gave me all the time in the world in his classroom. While classes came and went, I sat there and sculpted and did other things for 4 hours a day. So what's not to thank? Is the sweetest guy you'd ever know, Mr. Stever, and then Letterly. Mr. Letterly was actually teaching you in classes earlier, like I think he was maybe a ninth grade teacher or something. But he introduced me to the Munsell wheel, and there's probably, I don't know if there's anything in terms of the color problem and how to address color, like physically with paint, as clarifying as what he does, the Munsell system. So, but that teacher provided us sometimes with models. We did watercolor from models, no, not nudes, but and encouraged it every possible way. A form that he took very seriously. He was a painter on his own, despite being a school teacher. And both these other teachers tried to encourage me to like modern art. I couldn't get there I just couldn't get there. It just struck me as being absolutely absurd. In terms of in terms of the craftsmanship that was required, obviously, to do the other thing. And this looked like a joke, and I'm talking about, this is the entire era of the great American expressionists, as they were called. What was their title? But in some ways, I'd thank them for being there, because they gave clarity to what I wasn't doing, what I wouldn't be doing with my life, and they helped me to know what I wasn't. And I don't bother, I don't bother much with them. Some of their work, by the way, is beautiful, has a roots in beauty, and and I saw a really nice show, a catalog for a show in Washington D.C. Probably right about the time of Jack Kennedy, and. It was all these guys, but one work after that had really been beautifully curated. So that one picture after another was really quite nice from an aesthetic point of view. So whatever they aren't, there are days when they are of that thing that we value. And I've mentioned Georgi Kepish before. I thank him for his comment. I said to him, there's 99% of some number of abstract painting is pathetic or whatever. I didn't say that, but I said something, knowing that he was an abstract painter. And he said, well, don't you think maybe that it's also true that 90 whatever percent I used of representational painting is bad? And the fact is, I've never been able to deny that. It's a small percentage of work that's done that's really in a category that you simply would want to emulate. And but Georgi Kepish, who was out of a Bauhaus background, definitely was one of those people who had nothing I wanted to imitate, by the way. There's something way too fascinating about the representational for me. But then let me just go through this little list. Just I want to do this because giving thanks is good. You know what I mean? It's just like, it puts things in a little more perspective and stuff. You can get to a certain point and be pretty good at what you do, and you can forget the past. You can forget the people that put you there, whether you really understand it or not. I mean, of course, everybody can begin by appreciating their parents. We can begin by appreciating the creator of the universe, who's given us such a magnificence, just in terms of visual stuff, to explore and to evolve from, to develop our form from. The wealth of that is just sheer magic. It reminds me a little bit of one time I was out visiting with a farmer. I hope I haven't mentioned this, but it's still good if I have. But he took me out, and he did a little tour of his farm, and he just wanted to show you the plants on his farm. He said, I'm going to show you 100 plants today, all of which are edible. And I'm going to show you a couple that you wouldn't want to eat because they'll poison you or something, make you deathly sick, if not kill you. But it was a major eye opener. What a wealth of food there is just in a farm field in New England, of just stuff that grows and we don't harvest. And each one of them tasted really nice. I had a nice day wandering around, not using a camera to shoot them, but drawing little studies of them. I had to do them in 1 or 2 minute shots. So, but yeah. So thank you, Creator. Really the source, the inspiration, and what it is having eyes, and what it is to have a mind that perceives the beauty, and then that desire that we all have to create unity out of chaos, to create something of value, there's something special in our entire construct, don't you think? So yeah, but walking through, so I was. I was with somebody, and I'd totally forgotten their names, at the studio school on Canal Street way back when. I don't know if it's even still there in New York. And then after that, I went to the Art Students League. But there were things I was able to do there at that studio school with sculpture that was of value. But I'm so sorry that I don't remember the name of that teacher or anybody else actually there. It was such a short time, and it was my first experience. Just went right over my head, except that I was there sculpting every day. But in New York, though, I would start off by simply thanking Brackman for introducing me to paint. I mean, really, I hadn't used any. I hadn't picked up a brush of oil paint. I mean, except for a child playing with some oil paints that somebody left somewhere in my possession by some chance. And I immediately took a notebook with the canvas peeled off of the outside of a canvas notebook. I don't know why I thought to paint on that, but it was actually a canvas, and I painted a flower arrangement in a pot entirely from imagination. But it was the kind of stuff that you could thank that person for having left me oil paint. It was such a major thing. Another one of those moments, like seeing the Athenaeum, Washington, that you just suddenly are triggered by. Whoa, this is interesting, And you saw the capability of what you could do with it. I had the crappiest brushes. I mean, I don't think my folks even knew that I had. I did this painting on a trip to Wisconsin from Denver when I was a child. And but anyway, but you get to the Art Students League, and there's some people you really do have to thank. And Brackman introducing me to color, introducing me to color play and the ideas associated with Impressionism, with a brush in my hand, So he wasn't sitting there giving lectures on it. He was walking you through it, literally trying to help you to find light, help you find light effects through the Impressionist methodology. And he really woke me up to light and to the fact that the paint isn't a matter of making shapes and people and things, that it's actually got so much more to offer. And light was the thing that the Boston School, the Boston School, but Monet really made a special work out of. A lot of painters throughout history have painted light, and they all need to be thanked. But Monet is doing something really special, and you can see why, when people like Sargent were around, they didn't move toward Bouguereau. They moved away from Bouguereau, in fact. Not away from his knowledge, not at all, but they moved to, the guy that they gravitated toward and had to get something from. That missing piece was Monet. So if you're looking way back into that era, you can thank Velázquez and all these people, and I'm so thankful for that sort of thing, the base that we can build from. But it was Brackman who introduced me just to what can happen in paint. I don't recall more than that. I don't want to say a lot more than that. The relational was the key. And I've said to students ever since, he would be standing there with a cigarette, ashes falling off his cigarette, and talking with it hanging there while his hands were full, one with a rag and one with a brush, and talking to you, and the cigarette bouncing up and down his lip, and he says just this to this and that to that, and he'd be talking about color notes. And but if you understand what he said, and over time you understood that it applies absolutely to everything if you're an eye person, in fact it does anyway. But the finding of the look of nature in front of you, the art literally is based on finding the relationships of the elements visual. And Brackman introduced me to that, and I thank him so much. I studied also at the League with Daniel Green and David Leffel. Daniel Green had a sense of organization, really suggested, the idea of, for the first time, the idea of middle tones and the ideas of where the richest lights are on a form in a given light, and but the way he arranged his palette when he was doing a pastel, and his description of that, he was so methodical in the, that opened up an awareness to me of a of the usefulness, and in fact, a sort of an aspiration. It created a certain aspiration in myself to be more methodical. So I really grateful to him for that. I don't much appreciate that he suggested that I don't read books. That I should just look at the pictures. But that's a moment. That's I can't say that. But nevertheless, though, that's a big deal. And in fact, I still make marks to some degree, some of the way he does, laying a couple strokes down and crossing them with a third stroke. Those sorts of things, just getting some color up there is actually, he had a model that was a very contagious one that was very useful. When it comes to David Leffel, I remember that the big thing about David was the fact that he was painterly. He'd use mass. He would paint like a mass painter. Green had been a student of Brackman, and he just decided he was going to draw better. He said, I decided the only way to be really different, to make myself different, is to draw the hell out of things. So he'd been raised up in that world of the Sawyers, Raphael, Isaac, I forget the third Sawyer, but they're sort of coming out of that social commentary background, the Ashcan stuff, and their work isn't disciplined, and it isn't, so you'd say it's not drawn well in one sense. In the sense of articulate look of nature drawing. It is drawn well enough in the sense of being adequate enough for a storytelling thing, a little cartoony maybe. But and that conversation, that thought was enough. That was a benefit as well, by the way. So, but David Leffel actually had an inclination to paint more like a mass painter, and sort of introduced to us the idea of painterly painting. I can't tell you who used that term. But in both cases, by the way, or in all three of these cases, all of them gave demonstrations, and you can't, the things you glean through people's demonstrations is immeasurable. Actually, you gain stuff you didn't know you gained, and but each one of them had something sort of interesting and unique to offer. I don't paint like any of those guys in particular now at all. In one sense, I mean, I make marks sometimes like Green, or I'm aware of this to this like Brackman, and I don't particularly paint Monet spots. I don't paint. I don't follow anything of the Green methodology, and in one sense, I'd be closer to Leffel, but not even that. My approach is rather radically different. And I don't pattern myself after anybody. I did get that sense from at least from David, that Rembrandt was his thing, like his darling or his great model, his great touchstone. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, the idea of paying attention to the masters, that's the value. You hear that from a teacher, and you begin to look at those guys for the first time. So so that would have been Monet for Brackman, and Leffel would have been the Rembrandt thing. But in fact, when I think back about the demonstrations, they're in some ways much more like a Manet or something like that in the way, not in the ultimate result, but in the way he was marking, with a paint, a loaded brush and stuff like that. So the anatomy lectures of Hale in New York were something very special, and they did give you a definite appreciation of the anatomical, an appreciation of knowledge. Let's put it that way, of the knowledge that's part of our system, part of our understanding, that isn't related to just the painting problem, but is underlies it. So as many people know, talking about, as I've said to you before, talking about the science of drawing light on an object. He was that guy talking about what happened, the salient points of bones, the knuckle, and where it shows up on on the elbow, and talked about any number of points that way. But he brought a level of science, and he stood there with a long, maybe a 3 or 4 foot long charcoal on a 3 or 4 foot long stick, and articulated really beautifully. So it was a practical thing, not just a question of not just a question of knowledge that you'd read in a book and pass tests with words and that sort of thing. So it's visual. So I hugely appreciated that stuff. As much as sometimes I say I didn't get much from the art students, like I mean, I really didn't get much compared to what happened when I got to Gammel, and I was really looking for the rest of the story. And I forget who else did I work with. Somebody else. I worked with a couple of sculptors at the art students league as well. Jose de Kreft and somebody else. No, it was just Jose. I had ambitions to work with this other guy, and I don't know what happened to him. He just wasn't teaching at the time. So, yeah. So, but yeah, nothing comes from nothing. So when I got to Gammel, though, it's just like I can't begin to even say what he brings or what he introduced me to. The level of it. First of all, the seriousness and the all-encompassing knowledge that he had, and the ability to communicate that stuff, the whole range of stuff. And I didn't look at his stuff as if he was the most desirable guy to model, like literally to paint like. I still, frankly, don't. I mean, I don't. I aspire to different things, shall we say? But he introduced me to all the ideas of the Boston School, and he would say, of course, I've said before, he'd say, which is not really something to give thanks for, but it's a paint as I say, not as I do, and I don't. But we really did paint as he did, and we even traced our drawings onto canvas and masked them in the way an imaginative painter would. We didn't really. Well, in some ways, actually, I shouldn't say that too much because that some imaginative painters would finish their drawing, then just paint the head and go down. And Gammel really didn't do that. We really did mask great masses all over the place. But that level of professionalism that he brought, and that seriousness, where you really knew you were in the right place as a serious human being, that you didn't have to think of yourself in lesser terms like why don't you get a real job and that sort of thing. There's and the level, the skill, the ability to think, the idea of, as I've mentioned before, the idea of thinking things through, and the challenge he became doing that. And and then of course that whole big thing that you want to thank Gammel for in particular might be just the idea that he began to lay out the problem where we are right now, or at that point where we were. And we all agreed, I mean, there was no question at all that we'd been undercut, that the schools had been taken over by a modernist, I'd say rather a modernist cult, if not just simply a modernist trend. And which had the sort of just model of whatever, and he was it wasn't that he made a few comments, but his goal was really to keep you pointed down the right road. That's why I say from time to time, I say to you, just look straight down the road. Don't look left or right, you don't get distracted. Remember who brought you to the dance. That was Gammel, and he made you a serious player by doing that. And then he held you to task. I mean, he would critique your work. You couldn't get away with having bad drawing and all those things. So that was something I never saw anything of at the Art Students League. So so that's another one of those massive things. I can go on and on about the sort of contributions of Gammel to a professional young guy, to a guy trying to be a professional, and I try to give what I have of that in whole, So I try to keep the full conversation going again with individuals. But yeah, I could go on and on, I suppose, but I think I'll stop there. Just giving you that background and walking through it may give you some ideas. I suppose I could just look at the Boston School itself and thank them, but there's an entire era of guys who really were breaking that open. But those guys did stay the course, and they brought about for me a means to drawing with color, to being the full master, color mastery, light mastery, and drawing. And And in Gammel too, the whole thing about composition. Like, we were making pictures. The art students, like, I don't remember ever having a discussion about making a picture. I remember rather trying to, but I don't remember any discussion. It was all, you just have a model. A model would sit there or stand there, and you'd paint. And I don't remember anything else. There were some classes I didn't attend that were for illustrators, but in looking at them, they weren't what I was looking for. Just somehow or other, instinctively, I sensed that. But still, thank you to the art students, like, for maintaining, even as you do now, a wide range of teachers that can give that at least had enough of the real stuff to keep a little bit of a thread going. And I understand there are others there now that I don't know, but I hear some pretty nice things about a couple of people there that are sort of fresh to the scene. But yeah, that's in the world of painting, though. That's probably most of it. And so again, thank you all for your contributions. Thank you for having been here for such a long time. We're getting up to our 200th video and our 2,000th subscribers. So my producer is talking about trying to do something special for you all for around the Christmas time. So for all you guys who have been participants in this in various ways. So look forward to that. We still haven't figured it out yet, and I'm relying on him. But of course, thank you to Whitaker for being that kind of a producer who actually is. First of all, he made this thing. He initiated the idea, and he essentially created my studio that I work in for this purpose, and set me up. He even gave me understanding about cameras and stuff, such as it is. So I could just go on and on. Thanksgiving is one of the most important things you can do, though. And, you just can't do it enough. Just look around. There's so much. And, we're nothing really without those around us. You may want to look past it and think, poor me and stuff like that. And whatever you got, you've done yourself, but nah, not so much. And it's not a worthy thought anyway. So, well, I'm wandering off now. Anyway, well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing more of you next week. And we'll talk about painting again. I have a couple of very nice questions coming up. All right. So give thanks. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.